morning, everybody. I'd like to call this Operations Planning Committee for Thursday, June 10th to order. It's really wonderful to see all of you back here in 206 in person without masks.
Likewise.
I'm cautiously optimistic that we are beyond the pandemic. Of course, we have to be mindful of certain variants and how and when they might impact us, but we're going to enjoy this time right now. So thanks for being here. Terry Wood could not join us this morning. I think that she's in recovery mode from quite a roller coaster legislative session, but we'll look forward to a good update from her next time. Our first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes of May 13th. So if you haven't seen them, I'll give you a moment to take a look. And when you're ready, I'll entertain a motion to approve or any corrections or revisions.
I will make a motion to move them.
Okay.
Second.
Those seconds. Is there any further discussion about the May 13th minutes? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Great, okay. Thank you very much. We'll move right into our updates. Why don't we start with you?
Great. Well, good morning. I'll echo your sentiments, Jamie. It's so good to be in person and see everyone. So happy to be here. It's hard to imagine, but we are winding down the school year. Finals are occurring as we speak, and graduation is next Wednesday. So we're excited. There are 0 COVID cases, 0 quarantines right now. So knock on wood, we'll continue that way. As always, at the board level, a lively discussion around masks and children. We are still following state of education and state health mandates via guidelines from the CDC. And while Alan, I believe, our superintendent, is continuously, including today, on meetings with other superintendents and at the state level, the guidelines are still for masks. I know there's a lot of discussion, excuse me, in other states. Right now, we are looking for as normal a school opening as possible, but right now the indication is that there will be masks for school opening in September. But I think, as we all know, that's a little bit a ways, and a lot of things can change between now and then. But Alan is excited to kind of move forward with as much of a normal school opening as possible. So remote learners, we were at a high of 690 at one point. We're down to 165. A lot of that are folks just being cautious, some of the sports folks and stuff like that. I'm excited. We had in-person induction of our National Honors Society members last week, which I attended, which was awesome. We've had a theater production, a choral production, so a lot of normal stuff has gone on. Next week we'll have the senior awards ceremony, the senior parade, which is a new tradition that came out of COVID, which I'm excited to see back. We will have a Fitch Academy graduation, and then next Wednesday, our normal graduation. Graduation will be outside, no masks, but we are limiting to 5 members per family per graduation. So, and I think everyone is on board with that.
That's 5 p.m., right, dude?
It is, correct, Steve.
Thank you.
Make sure you're there.
I know. It wasn't on my calendar.
Alan provided us also an update on the American Recovery Act. Our slice of that is $1,025,185. We have to file our plan by June 23rd. There is no back to school plan required at this time like there was last year from the state. I don't think that's going to change, but you never know. But this is what the district and the administration is working on right now. The goal of the American Recovery Act and what will be submitted is all around in-person instructional and continuity of services plan. Kind of the tenets of that plan that the district has been working on are health and safety strategies, continuity of services, stakeholder feedback, periodic review of the process. We're able to review it and amend it every 6 months, and have it in an understandable and uniform format. So we will be reviewing that at our next board meeting. The expenditures across that Alan has outlined, he's done a graph and goes across 5 kind of areas: acceleration, academic renewal and student enrichment, family and community connections, social, emotional, and mental health, strategic use of technology and staff development, and building and safety and health in schools. So he has outlined to us kind of the $1 million and how that'll be allocated over the course of the next year. We did get an update on enrollment. As of June 1st, enrollment has exceeded our projections by 25 students. The bulk of that is kindergarten is still a little behind. We projected 351, we're at 319. Class sizes in the 3rd grade at Holmes and Tokenique are larger. There's one section at Royal. Oxridge has one section ready to break, but we continue to monitor that closely. And just Middlesex, projected enrollment was a little 1,101. We're at 1,095. In Darien High School, we are plus 13 over our enrollment. So,
Do you think that's from people moving into the district?
yes.
Is that an abnormally high number?
No, not if you look back over the years. It kind of averages between 15 or 20, somewhere around there. So, and
So were any of those changes enough to affect the number of sections you have?
yes, right now we are probably going to break 2 sections, which would go into budget control. There's a potential for another 2 sections to break. So that'll continue to be monitored. And that is with having normal classrooms and not breaking classrooms because of social distancing or COVID or spacing. So
When you say break, that mean like there's 26 kids in a classroom and you're breaking it to 13 and 13?
not necessarily 13 and 13,
Right,
but yeah. It exceeds the guidelines of where we want to be at a maximum level, and then we'll break the section.
Do you have enough classrooms?
Yes, we do. Nothing
Well,
we need to build between now and then.
Well, no, we'll approve it.
So
Sorry,
will that change your FTE projections?
No, we have 4 FTEs built into the budget and budget control, so that's what we work with. If we did go beyond that, the administration would have to come to us for approval to add FTEs and go through the normal budget process. We are excited. We've appointed 4 out of the 5 assistant principals, and the 5th will be an internal 1-year appointment over at Tokenique that we're excited about. We also, this past week, appointed the principal at Tokenique and Hinley, and the principal at Middlesex has been appointed also. So all principals and assistant principals have been filled. Hiring continues, but Marge feels we're in good shape and have had a good pool of candidates too. Alan also said they've got a good, looks like 2 great candidates for the teacher in residency program too. So we're excited to hear and see more about that. This past week we also celebrated the retiree of 21 of our staff. So we did that on Tuesday night, and then Alan also recognized award winners for each of the elementary schools, Middlesex, and 2 students at the high school, which was exciting. We did that all by Zoom, and their parents were able to participate, so that was exciting. Oxridge continues to be on schedule. We pushed our meeting to next week to give them a little more time to present the plan to us next week around what the work will look like over the course of the summer. Because that entire front parking lot will be torn up and reconfigured. And so I attended one meeting up there a couple of weeks ago about, the design and the flow and getting ready for back to school. So that'll be something that'll be presented to us next week. And the conversation too, was around how do we incent, I was up there the other day, how do we incent people to use the busing up there? It's just not a walkable area, although people do walk and some kids ride their bikes. But Luke Farshaw and the district will work on, something that incentivizes people to kind of take the bus as much as possible up there.
Is that going to be a temporary plan, or just while the construction's happening?
Yes, correct. What they want to do is they want to get as much of the permanent structures in place as possible, like lighting poles and utilities, burial of a tank, but it'll all be temporary asphalt and stuff like that, because they don't want to put stuff in there and have to take it out and put it back in again. So that's how they're gonna try and work the configuration and the drop-off and the pickup up there, so.
They had a really, really extensive and detailed construction schedule,
Yeah.
staging schedule.
Yeah. In
Yeah,
the summer.
I just wondered
it'll
about the
be-
busing, whether it was something we were permanently trying to encourage more
Yeah.
kids to take the bus.
I think overall, we'd
Yeah,
like more
especially at
people to
middle
take the
school.
bus, yeah.
There.
Kind of scares me, a lot of kids riding their bikes to Oxbridge.
Mhm.
I know, I was, yeah.
Not where I'd want to ride a bike.
No.
Actually, you know what, a previous superintendent said he had, never seen a community where so many kids walk and ride their bike and cut through fields and yards and just use any way they can. He goes, it's kind of nice. He goes, it's what you value in terms of a community, he said. So it's kind of neat, and I know we continue to talk and work on how we can make it more accessible with sidewalks and stuff like that, so
It's what people
ongoing.
want.
Yeah, ongoing. Just double check here. I think that is my update for right now.
One comment and
Sure.
one question for you.
Sure, absolutely.
So your awards ceremony
Yes.
next week, just as an FYI, falls on Flag Day.
Okay.
So, just to make a note of that, because
Yeah.
I note that there's a conflict in the calendar, because there's a ceremony here at Town Hall for Flag Day.
Okay.
And my question is, too soon to tell certainly, but what is your anticipation about return to school in the fall with kids in masks and kids sitting distanced from one another? Will school open in that posture, masked and 3 feet distanced, or masked and no distanced?
So right now, the plan is that, and this is based on where the state is landing right now, the guidance he's getting, students will be masked, and we will do the 3 feet distance as much as we can, but we will be back to normal classrooms and not have separate sectional breaks like we've had over the past year and the additional hiring needs. So that's the plan right now.
I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of lobbying between now and
Yes.
then about getting kids out of masks,
Yeah.
especially if most of the older folks who are able to have been vaccinated. Really trying to understand what the ongoing risk really is for
Yeah.
kids that typically aren't getting COVID to the degrees others have, and certainly
Yeah.
aren't getting it severely.
Yeah. No, but I think Alan is, in working with the teachers and the administration, I think the parents have been very vocal, as they should be, I think locally, and I said you need to be vocal at the state level also, in terms of, pushing the envelope
Yeah.
on the mask wearing. But Alan's version is a normal school opening. We can do the correct social distancing within our normal classroom configurations, and right now the guidance is with masks.
Okay.
But-
It must be, I don't know what the situation is in our schools with the current heat outside. I know many schools have had
Yeah.
short days because of the heat.
Yeah.
And I really feel for the kids that have to suffer from
Yeah.
warm in classroom conditions with a mask on.
Yeah, it did come up, and Alan monitors that. I know in New Jersey, the governor issued, each school can do whatever they need to do around masks and heat, and so I know Murphy issued that in New Jersey this past week. We haven't had any issues that I know of. I know Alan monitors every day. I think with the support of the town and through our budget cycle, we've got most of our buildings air conditioned.
I was gonna say that.
A lot of them with window units, but that will also change as we go through some of these renovations. But, I was up there this week at a couple of different schools for different events, and they all seemed pretty reasonably temperature-wise. So, yeah, but no, great point in this type of weather. Good. Yes, Mr. O'Leary?
And the school's going back to full-time on Friday, right? I heard that.
Correct, great question, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, that will move away. The other thing that we discussed is the upcoming year we're gonna add 2 professional learning days, which are just early dismissals or late starts. Next year will be the start up at the high school of the accreditation process. And so there is classes and work that has to be done from a teacher standpoint. So we discussed that the other night in an amendment to the school calendar of adding 2 days and looking where those days fall and how the professional learning has to occur for that accreditation that's coming up.
And just one last point. To my knowledge, every single school and every single classroom, or almost every single, has air conditioning.
Correct.
So, I mean, I realize your point about the 100-day weather and 90 degrees, but
Yeah.
our entire town, every single school's got air conditioning,
Yes.
so
Yep.
that's an excuse, but it's not,
Yeah.
it should not be an issue.
Yeah. No, it has not been, but it's a good point to constantly monitor those things.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Are you discussing generally any changes in start times for school?
We are not right now.
Okay. Some
I
schools
know-
are though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Some schools are. Greenwich has gone through the process. New Canaan has gone through the process. It's been part of their budget process. It's been quite a conversation over there. I think Alan has it on his radar screen. I think it will eventually come up for discussion, and I know there are parents in town that have, provided data and their thoughts on it, but I think it will be a topic of discussion at a future board meeting.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Duke? Okay. We will go to Seth.
Great. Well, we have our last meeting in the fiscal year coming up on the 21st of June. The Rules Committee met Monday, and how shall I put this? We sort of set the agenda for the RTM. We're in what I call the aha moment with the RTM. It's when different boards and committees suddenly realize that it's the last time the RTM is going to meet in this fiscal year. And oh, by the way, if you need to get anything approved for funding, it better get on the RTM agenda. So right after we set the agenda in the Rules Committee about the next morning, the phone starts ringing. Now, wait a minute, we've got something. So anyway, I will go through what I project to be on the RTM agenda coming up. We put nomination of a representative to the Town Technology Committee on the agenda. We don't have any nominees yet, but we're hopeful that before the RTM meeting we will. We're taking care of the representative from the town on the town pension board, their term, we'll extend that. We're looking at a charter and code change regarding degendering, the town code and the code of ordinances. It's an administrative function. It does cost money to do it. We don't have any money in the RTM. Something I talked to Jack Davis about. I said, next year, Jack, why don't we go and ask for some money so we have a little. It's interesting, but the RTM does not have a budget. All of our money is in the town clerk's office. The town clerk does all of our administrative work. They send out all of our advices and everything. We work extensively. As Krista has found out, the phone rings regularly. We will pass a resolution to degender, but it will take approval from the Board of Selectmen for the money and the Board of Finance probably for the money. $4,500. We will recommend the reappointment of William Jessup to the 5 Mile River Commission. We're going to give people the option of not receiving warnings and agendas from the RTM by hard copy. They'll be able to get them by email. That will lighten the load in the town clerk's office significantly, and we'll see if that isn't a way to make things a little bit more efficient. We have a bookkeeping item for the Park and Recreation Commission, $250,000 in additional income to cover $250,000 in extra unanticipated expenses. That will be on there. There are two other items pending. There's an opportunity to get a grant of up to $15,000 for an affordable housing plan. So we'll put that on the agenda. It's not there now, but we will ask the RTM to do it.
I found
And
out about
We
the
had our
opportunity
own
yesterday, so I.
I have the ink is just drying on a memo from Kate.
Yep.
And so we'll go with that. Board of Ed has some money for creating a plan for lockdown, $450,000. And the question is, how will that be funded? Will that come through the RTM, or will it come from the Board of Finance?
It's
Will it come
$325,000.
325? Okay.
Is that the ad or the total?
Great question. It's 325 is the total, and there's $100,000 already in the existing capital budget that was allocated towards this system.
Oh, so it's 425, okay.
So
No, it's
no,
325.
that's
325 to
325.
add to.
Less 100.
Plus-
so it's
okay.
the ask is 225.
All right. Okay, so we still have to work that out between how that's gonna be funded, because you get some in reserves, and so Mr. Davis is from the F&B committee, is working with Board of Finance, Board of Education, and we'll figure that out. The only other thing is the question of in-person meetings for the representative town meeting. There is, we're under the governor's order 7H, which expires June 20th. There are two questions. One is, what if he renews it, how's he gonna renew it? What's the new guidance gonna be after June 20? We could try to do in-person meeting in September, but if they stay with the existing spacing requirements, 6-foot spacing, they haven't got room to do it. It would be all over the place. So the other thing is voting. Right now, we're under special dispensation to be able to vote electronically. Will that be renewed? Will we continue to have that ability? So we'll see. But it's under consideration. Personally, I'd rather meet in person. There's a lot of dialogue that goes on in those meetings, during the meeting, before the meeting, after the meeting. A lot gets done. So I kind of like it, but I have some naysayers, some of my committees who want to continue to meet electronically. We'll see where it all goes.
Is that a health issue that they want to continue to meet electronically, or is it a convenience issue?
I would say convenience
Yeah, I think.
primarily.
We have an update.
Yeah, we have an update on that, yeah, that's already done.
Who
Should
wants to
say.
go? Kate?
Update on that?
Okay, so House Bill 6448, it was, I don't think they call it like an aircraft carrier bill, it had a whole bunch of stuff in it that was completely unrelated to one another. One of the items was in-person meetings, and I believe that the gist of the law is that no longer is it mandated that you have to provide a remote or hybrid alternative for your meetings. And they leave it up to boards and commissions, not to the municipality, if I have the wording correct. It's up to boards and commissions. So I think what Kate and I are going to recommend is that each board and commission takes a vote on how they want to proceed. It makes a difference because, we have to have people who need to be responsive from a technology perspective to assist boards and commissions.
Right.
If remote hybrid is going to continue to be our posture. So, Seth, I leave it to your good judgment to take a vote in the RTM to determine how you would like to vote for your next meeting. I think
It's,
that your
yeah,
agreed.
we are, yes, and, the existing FOI law interpretations are, you can have remote participation if it's in the board or commission's rules of operation. So, we're going to suggest that everybody adopt some kind of rules. Like, years ago, the Board of Finance decided no to remote participation. But the one thing the FOI says is that any member of the public watching the meeting would have to be able to identify those people who are participating remotely. So if somebody was calling in to say a Board of Finance, it would be Frank Huck. Anytime Frank speaks, he'd have to say, this is Frank Huck. The voting, I think, is the biggest problem for the RTM. To do that with some in person and
She
with
has
some
the
remote.
scars. The scars are.
I do, I have the scars. It's a different thing if, planning and zoning wanted to, there's not that many members to account for it, but with 100 people, that will be a challenge, so.
Oh, all right, so now do we have another item to put on the agenda for the 20th?
You should read that.
Jamie,
bill
could I,
first.
Yeah.
may I
It's not
ask?
signed yet, but
Yep.
Excuse me. So with respect to that, what you just spoke about, is there anything in there about the social distancing aspect of it? Of having a meeting in person?
We've been
How
following the
many
guidance that,
You've been following the social distance guidance?
well, what we've been following is that if you're vaccinated,
Yeah.
you don't have to
Okay,
distance.
that makes sense.
If you're not vaccinated, and we've just been treating the audience like, you're on the honor system, but
Yeah.
trying to maintain masking and social
Okay.
distancing.
That makes sense.
So we have 100 people coming through the door, and we're gonna
Well,
stop
you know-
each one and say, now listen.
No,
No.
I think,
We're not.
if you, we could talk about it later. but,
No,
you know,
I don't mean to, yeah, exactly.
You could do
yeah.
one thing and say, if you're vaccinated, feel free to come on down. If you're unvaccinated, here's a range of places where you can sit. You can use the balcony. But,
But they're divided by
then-
districts because.
well, yeah, so
we
there's a
vote.
lot to talk about. So,
Yes.
we
You
should
and I-
sit with Krista and, and
All
your
right.
leadership and have discussions about how it might work. We can send out a survey to your membership to see how they feel.
Survey is a great idea.
Mhm.
That avoids having to do a vote, having to assemble everybody and have a,
This will be fluid over the next couple of years.
agreed. I mean, I think it's a permanent law if it
It
gets
is.
signed.
No, I know, I just
But
mean.
not
Exactly.
signed yet, huh?
The social conventions in the country generally.
It's gonna change.
Flux on this kind
Right.
of thing, in business, and we can expect that that'll impact us in some
Yeah.
way.
Yes.
shape.
I think
We
the
should-
important thing you're gonna have to remember is making sure that there's proper public access
Yep.
and transparency. So we're working on equipping this room with monitors that will help if we continue to have virtual participation in meetings, not just for the board members, but for the public. But, how will that operate? And how do you allow the public the appropriate public access? And with a board member who's not in person, they can't do an executive session if you're not in person. You can't participate if we can't be certain that you are alone. So there's lots of things to be ironed out. And I think you're right that it's going to be fluid and change, and each board will have different ways of adapting.
And the technology companies see this fluidity as an opportunity to kind of displace Zoom. And, in other words, a more hybrid structure they'll work to create kind of forms for.
Yeah, and think about the RTM and something like Zoom and how many faces you can have on a screen at one time. We've already talked about, we could hook up computers to the projector and put it on the big screen in the auditorium, but say you have 40 of your RTM members don't want to come in person, you don't have room to put 40 pictures on the screen. It's so much to...
well, we had the face assistant, Mrs. McNally, helping to recognize with Kate during the meeting when somebody had their hand up and wanted to speak, because it's very easy with 100 to miss somebody. And then you find out about it 2 items down the agenda. Wait,
Well,
I
and
had something to
people
say.
not realizing
Yeah.
how the technology worked and trying to,
Oh.
I get people emailing me during meetings saying, I want to ask a question. Well, I'm not checking that. So it's a lot.
I was getting texts.
Yeah, I got everything.
Do you want to give that breaking news?
Yeah.
Oh,
The bill we're just talking about did not pass the Senate.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, wait a minute, we'll cross that off.
So,
I don't know what that means for us.
yeah,
I don't know.
it passed the House on Tuesday night, Monday night,
Yeah.
something like that, Tuesday night. No, Monday night, because I found out about it on Tuesday. I guess I went to the Senate last night, and according to our leader of Westcog.
Well,
the
they're going
Senate
back
did
to
not-
this special session. They can try
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
My only input on this is, it's just the story is, the electronic meeting's coming. I don't think social distancing and all that stuff is gonna stick around for a while, but the electronic meeting's gonna be around for a while. I mean, I think it's gonna work for our commission. And I think your report's dead on. It's for public access and for people to participate and not have to be here. So eventually you'll figure it out. The NBA figured out how to put, 5,000 people on this TV screen, a
Mhm.
flat screen, but I think the NBA's got more money than we do.
Yeah, well, yeah. But then, then you're dealing with issues
Yeah.
like, if you've got a member who
Let's get a budget for
who
it.
has their home, a summer or winter home in Florida, and they want to participate from Florida, is that right? Is that, if they're not here addressing living with issues, is that should that be the way it is?
I think to Jamie's point, I think that's a board and commission thing. If we
Yeah.
have 6 people and one of them doesn't want to live in Darien, 11 months out of the year,
Yeah,
they don't want to be on the commission,
is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's for us to adjudicate, that's probably to be adjudicated at time of election or appointment, quite frankly, but, I think some of us have strong opinions about that to be true. I'm trying to get a sense for what it means if that bill dies. I think what it means is we go back in person after July 20th. So that would make life easier for all of us, probably.
Be just the
right?
rule.
Right. Seth, I have a couple of questions for you on the charter degendering idea.
Yes.
Is the concept of degendering the charter something that the RTM as a whole voted to move forward?
No, it's on the agenda to be
Okay.
voted on. The Rules Committee
The
saw...
funding or the concept, or both?
Both.
Okay, great. Okay. I wasn't for selectmen when we undertook a charter revision, but you will likely remember,
Yes.
right? I think we seated a charter revision commission, and we had folks in the RTM themselves doing that revision work, suggesting revisions to the charter. Would that be true?
We had 2 things going at the same time. We had the commission plus the Board of Selectmen had a...
Okay.
We were going through it page by page with town council.
Okay.
And then we were exchanging it with the commission, and the commission was coming back, and,
So this sounds like it's a fairly administrative change, right?
Yeah.
Could we not have a cadre of volunteers who go through the charter and make those changes and recommend those changes at 0 cost to the town?
It's a question of time, effort, and doing it correctly. This company has a computer system, that's set up to do it legally if you want to use some other, some term or correctly, and they scan through, pull out all the terms, make the changes. They do it every day because they've got a lot of municipalities that are doing this. So we thought of that. We thought the cost and the time and the effort, we were thinking more if you had town council do it, but also the idea of getting volunteers to do it. Doing it in a consistent manner. The most consistent way seemed to be to use the muni people and have them do it, and that's why we proceeded with that. Does it preclude doing it with volunteers? No, I don't think so, except trying to do it in an efficient and consistent manner with a bunch of people trying to, who've never sort of done this before.
Well, that's why I asked about the Charter Revision Commission. It sounds like they had a precedent for doing that kind of work in the past with volunteers.
Yeah,
It's
we
not
did.
that hard, by the way. Did this degenerating thing, I redid the church bylaws of like 40 pages. I'm not volunteering, by the way.
Got it. First one, there we go.
It was just one of my
Yeah.
goals in this process. Degenerating, it wasn't that hard at all.
And actually, our code is online, you can search the
Yeah.
code by
Yeah,
words.
so I'm just curious
It wouldn't
about
be,
that.
it wouldn't be that difficult. You just have to identify the things you're searching for.
Yeah.
What, procedure-wise, you hire this company, the town hires this company to identify all the changes that need to be made. Then you have to go back and have a public hearing to adopt those changes, or before adopting those changes? What's the?
Yeah,
Is it just this one vote on the 21st, or do you have to come back to a second?
I would imagine that you would have to have a vote on the final form, yes.
So they'll tell you,
Right.
these are all the things to be changed.
Right.
Who determines, when we say degendering, like we change he to he, she, they, or?
Well,
is that
they
gonna-
have a list in the contract of the changes that would be made. And it's pretty extensive.
So one thing that, and I haven't been part of your discussions, but we live in a time where gender is very fluid. And you can do a search and find that there are more than several identified genders at this point in time. So whatever changes are made to the charter really should live on in perpetuity and have language that would encompass any future changes to gender as we know it today. I happen to think that the charter actually is gender neutral based on the wording in the town code. I've always,
Well, we have a sentence, so we have one sentence, but it's only in one place.
could you add it in another place?
I think you could, but I think the sense was that they wanted something a little more specific, that's all.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I guess, to underscore my point is, I don't think you want to go back from time to time and
Add another.
and continue to
yeah.
regender the town charter. So whatever language is chosen should be very carefully chosen so that it can capture any future changes. None of us will likely be around for it, but I don't know.
Well, I guess with any technical change, it's the best available at the time, and like any document that's written, there has to be some flexibility to go and make changes as you go along, and as times change and things change. No, do you want to be doing that once a week? No. I think the last time we looked hard at that was, 8 years ago or something like that? So my guess is that it will be, if there's an objection, we'll hear. But there is in the supporting documents, there's a note from the company and shows the type of work that they do and what the degendering entails. So people have a pretty good view of that. I think it's the best available at the time.
I'm wondering if an amendment to the charter could serve the same. A simple, a one-page amendment to the charter. Obviously, Muni Code is a business, right? They stay in business by getting paid to do this kind of stuff.
Right.
But I'm just thinking about a simple, effective process for the RTM in the town.
With the $4,500, do they just update the online version? Or do we get new hard copies as well? I want to make sure we've considered all the costs that there may be.
Yeah. I'll look at that, and I can't give you
I don't know that many people use the hard copies anymore, but there are some who still like the ebook, so.
You have a printed one on the shelf, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I use it all the time. Okay, I appreciate, thank you for answering the
Yeah.
question. Okay, let's move on to Frank, Board of Finance.
Well, I don't have a great deal. You've already talked a little bit about that $225,000, the additional funding, and we're going to focus on that next week, and we're obviously interested in the RTM's input as to whether we do this through the Board of Finance contingency or we go to the general fund. So that's to be decided. The assumptions that we built in coming up with a budget for this coming year in terms of town revenues and surpluses and accounts as of June 30, they're all proving to be pretty good. So no real issues there. And we'll be focusing later this summer or into early fall on enough funding for the final funding on the Oxbridge School. Rates seem to be within a range so far. So I don't know that there's a huge pressure, but probably ought to get something done sooner rather than later.
I agree. My husband is actually in the business of municipal bonds, and there's no inventory, so the prices right now are extremely favorable for issuers.
It's- right.
It's historic, actually,
Oh.
so, I did send a note to John saying, time to bond if we have anything to bond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where you know, when they changed the laws years ago, it kills us because, you know, the arbitrage regulations,
Mhm.
you have to spend it within a certain time. We
Yes.
can't, you know, we can't go bond the whole amount and save it,
But the timeframe is plenty long enough to,
that we're close enough.
yeah.
So you
What
can't
is,
bond
what
the
is
whole
that
school until it's
timeframe
filled.
that we have to spend?
You have to spend, in order to avoid arbitrage rebate, you have to spend, on a construction project, you have deadline, you know, targets, like you have to spend 10% of the proceeds in 6 months, and, you know, so much in 12 months, and so much, and then like virtually all of it by the, you know, by the end of the period. So you couldn't go and take the whole 60 million in bond and then spend, you know, as you know, earn the interest and keep the interest.
It's not a construction loan, huh? It's a takeout loan.
You know, towns used to do things, they used to arbitrage and make money off of bonding. And so the IRS or the, you know, federal government passed some laws and they don't let us do it anymore.
Pretty sure that arbitrage formula is non-existent right now, right?
Well, yeah, but you still have to do all the record keeping.
Yeah, we don't make anything.
It brings up another issue that we didn't discuss, Duke, and that is the time frame for the 3 elementary school construction projects.
Mhm.
You know, I know that we need to sort out building committee, but
Right.
in the minds of the Board of Education, how soon would you like to see those projects moving forward? Because, you know, if there's an opportunity to bond,
Mhm.
is that roughly $50-some million projected?
Trying to look at the numbers in my head there. It's somewhere probably closer to 60, I think,
Yeah,
total.
57,
Yeah.
something like that, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, just the fact that it continues to come up in conversations, all positive now that people feel we do have the, you know, it's set in motion, specifically around the portables, but I think sooner than later. I think people would like to see that, and I think, you know, in terms of some of the stuff that Mike Lynch wants to do or feels can be done, you know, during the summer months, that's where I think we want to look at what the schedule looks like. So I'm not, you know, if you think of sitting a building committee, going through the state process, which would be next June for filing that information for any type of reimbursement, so it would be very difficult to see anything start, you know, further out than a year from now, in terms of design and the different phases
P&Z,
that you
right?
go through.
P&Z got front of P&Z.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I think there's less, you know, there's less work in terms of, you know, the design and the architectural components of it, because you're just gonna try and mirror what the schools look like, you know, similar brick and windows and stuff like that. And they pretty much are just kind of boxes put onto each school in terms of classrooms and libraries and reading rooms. So, but then, you know, part of it also is looking at some of the, to our earlier conversation, specifically at Hinley too, looking at the traffic and the parking and the bus loops
Yep,
are part of that also. So,
okay.
You
yeah.
just have to be mindful of the timing of all the steps that have to be taken
Yes.
before that horrible arbitrary June
Yes.
deadline.
Yeah.
I don't know why the state can't accept things on a rolling basis,
Yeah,
but.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we did it, you know, the building committee did an incredible job, but, you know, that was a tight timeline
That
to
was
get all
tight.
that
That was
stuff
very
in there,
tight.
and thanks to the RTM for, you know, that whole process of approving an appropriation before you really have even a design completed.
So the filing's June 2022?
You have to, the school grant application, all the stuff that you have to do with the state, it has to be in, it's a deadline like by the end of June each year.
Are you doing it
Is it for the
21?
bond commission? Is it for the annual budget?
No, I think it's, I don't know.
That's a good question.
Is this going in 2021 or 2022?
Well,
Like,
not
we're in
going in
June.
2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
You know,
that's
because
what I
we have
said,
to
it
have
would
all
be
sorts
for
of things
next-
like you have to have an appropriation in place, you have to have a committee in
Right.
place
Yeah.
before you can apply to the state.
So we're talking 2023.
You
Yeah.
have to
I
approve
think,
an
Jamie,
appropriate-
if you think about when you sat the last building committee,
Yeah.
I think we're a little ahead of the timeline on that. If we could seed it, organize it over the summer, early fall,
Mhm.
and then I think that gives the right amount of time, especially since they're renovations, to have those applications in by June and go through the process.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
I'm looking to schedule that meeting. I spoke to Alan this week about it.
sure. And I'm going to assume that we will want to pursue state reimbursement at our 10.7% of eligible costs, whatever that is, but
Yes.
that's certainly a decision that,
Yeah.
should be collaborative with the
Yeah.
Board of Finance. If there's some reason that it allows us to move faster in some way, if there's some long-term savings to be had that can recoup.
Weigh the benefits of,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
agreed.
Okay. Anything else, Frank? Board of Finance, okay. Steve, Ledington.
Thank you. I'm gonna try to be quick. I have a little bit of a long list. You can cut me off whenever you want to.
I would never do that. Never do that.
I just like writing this stuff down. What do we do this week? This week, we closed 3 public hearings on zoning text changes or amendments to our zoning code. And that was put forth by the Planning and Zoning Commission. We also closed and delivered on a 4th zoning change for the town of Darien, and they are as follows. One is to basically change the inclusionary housing we have for multifamily from 12% that we have now up to 14%. And the trigger is anything that's 4 units or more. Right now, it was kind of sort of 5 units or more. And by changing that, we're going to get a couple more affordable housing units on proposed projects that we might have missed last time. And if you guys always remember that the state mandate is 10%, the 830G threshold is 30%. And when I worked in Manhattan, it was called 80-20, and it was 80-20. Westchester is basically 10%. So we're trying to move the ball forward on that. The other item that we took out, or that we're proposing to take out, is in the town of Darien, there's a 600 square foot minimum size apartment that you're allowed to have. So we want to wipe out that minimum size apartment, so people can build smaller apartments if they want to. We already do have small apartments in town. The smallest ones we have in town right now are about 415 square feet at 397 Post Road. They're studio apartments. The good part about that is when you have a small apartment, it makes the rent a little bit cheaper inside that building. An apartment for a studio is $1,195. There's one available today if anyone wants to rent it. The third item that the town put forth was to change the parking regulations. Our parking regulations for any multifamily project is 2.5 parking spaces per apartment. So if you have a studio, if you build a studio apartment, you have to have 2.5 parking spaces. If you also have a 3-bedroom apartment, you also have to have 2.5 parking spaces. So we put forth a proposal to change the number of required parking spaces based upon the size of the apartment, which is studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. So it's a graduated scale that's more consistent with market parameters and consistent with best practices in land planning. The fourth item that we just closed, there's a company called Parklands LLC, which owns 1 Parklands office building, put forth a proposal to add a new zoning district in town called the Design Office Multifamily Overlay Zone, where you can put it. In town we have a thing called Design Office Zoning District. You can put this multifamily overlay on top of that and convert that office building to a multifamily housing project. There is a couple buildings in town that are basically empty office buildings that could get repurposed. That's been a phenomenon that's been going on for 25 years. The office buildings that are out of date, it takes too much money to make them back into office buildings, so they convert them to housing. We need affordable housing in town. We need diversified housing in town. It's also a very green initiative. Like Garden Homes was an existing office building. They didn't do anything, and they put in 35 kitchens, 35 bathrooms, and their building stayed the same, so you save a lot of money, and it's a green initiative. So those are the 4 things. We close those. We'll deliberate on the overlay zone once they're ready. We have not deliberated on the other one. The other one, we have a 5th one that's in the horizon. In our town, I've said this many, many times, there's been a demand for people to put accessory dwelling units on their property, which in our town, a lot of it's got to do with apartments and kitchens inside pool houses or guest houses. With the advent of outdoor kitchens, I can have a guest house next to my pool, and I can put the kitchen about 10 feet outside the guest house, and it's legal. Last week, we saw an application over on either Long Neck Point or Pear Tree Point where they're building a brand-new house with a garage with space above it, and then a guest house. Right now, those do not have kitchens. They have bathrooms that don't have kitchens in them, but those are a perfect thing, and you could put people to live inside those things, and that's also a thing that's been asked for in town, so we're probably gonna look at that our own self. I'll get into a little bit more of that a little bit later. With regards to some other construction going in town, the federal project is basically up to the 2nd floor. The old Walgreens is gone.
New one's not bad.
My father-in-law loves it. He's there all the time. I don't know what he's buying.
Everyone
but
raves about it that goes in there.
He buys one thing at a time.
I think we got an upgrade there.
It was nice.
Yeah. So that's done. They also completed the sidewalks from basically the mobile gas station down to the end of the new Walgreens. There's also a set of stairs that goes over the top of the project from the West Avenue side that goes into the new Walgreens side building. I think that's going to be done soon. We're kind of excited about that. As you know, the federal, maybe you don't know, federal bought the Valvallis building, Innovative Invitations building a couple of years ago. We may see that come back someday if they reconfigure some of the stuff in front. Federal also finished all the curbing for the new sidewalk along Norotan Avenue. It's now filled in with blacktop, but they'll pull that out, and that's going to be a model block sidewalk. Related to that, if you remember, the corner of Norotan Avenue and West Avenue is supposed to go into construction to widen those turning lanes. That project, I was told on Tuesday, did the final filing of permits and whatnot with the state. So the sidewalk that goes from Federal to the gas station, which is the mobile station, is going to be completed with the state, and we widen the road there. I think that went out to bid, and you know more about stuff than I did.
I believe they're looking for construction to begin the end of the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. If the most important thing about this whole thing, when we deliberate all this stuff, when you just touched on it a minute ago, traffic during construction was a major question, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's going to be a nightmare." To my knowledge, I've not heard one complaint on anything.
How much of that was because of the pandemic happening?
Like
there's nobody going to the train stations.
Chips line up my way, I'll take them. I'll take them. So that's kind of cool. The one problem I heard with relative to the across the street, and I'm going to touch on that right now, the Gulf Station across the street is also losing a couple feet here and there on Norotan Avenue and West Avenue because of these new turns they're putting in. They also went to the ARB to have all new signage done, so they're going to do a modest renovation at the same exact time as retake their sidewalk. The only thing, if you go over there and look at it, that's going to take a little bit of time is there's a utility pole that's there that's got all kinds of spaghetti on it. So that's going to take a little bit of a while. But my hope is that with people, I think some of this stuff is going to start in August or late August. I think when people come back in September, you're going to see a couple of new changes in town.
Is there still any type of plan when sidewalks are redone where it makes sense to incorporate the brick and the nice street lights and all that type of stuff? That's always part of the plan. Okay.
It's on West Avenue, it's not. On Norotan Avenue, it is. We put in a thing that's called on the post road, it's called model block, is what we call it.
Okay.
There's specific guidelines.
Got it.
We allowed the people on West Avenue, which is really Corbin and Federal, Palmer's and Federal, to come up with their own model block.
Okay.
As a P&Z commission, I personally don't care if it's green sidewalks or purple sidewalks, but ARB does. So we stayed out of it and said, you guys figure it out, whatever you figure it out, we can figure it out. The Department of Public Works got involved. on the Roten Avenue because there's some utility poles and it was taking, but that's all been worked out because I know the curbs are in.
So Steve, you're gonna have the Federal Palmer model block on that stretch of Norotan Avenue from west to Heights Road.
Correct.
What's happening on the other side? Anything? Like as the gas station is making changes, would they also enhance to this new modified model block so
No.
you've got the changes on both sides?
Yeah, no, the new sidewalk that's in on the backside of Walgreens is just standard concrete.
I think
You know, I'm not talking about there, I'm talking about by
The gas stations.
what is the other gas station you just mentioned?
There's
Gulf.
three there. There's
It's
the Gulf
station
Station.
and the veterinary building. So at some point, I hope that your vision is that modified model block will exist on both sides of Norotan Avenue.
Okay, I'll check into that. I
Okay.
don't think it's the plan now. I've not, when that design came in to redo the corner, which is
Yep.
west and Roten, I
Yep.
don't remember getting deep into the weeds on the sidewalk.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have been part of the lot SIP project to change the construction of that intersection itself. But you have imposed a model block on the Federal and Palmer project.
Great.
I can see great value in having that short corridor from the on-ramp to 95 up to West Avenue be that modified model block.
Yeah, I think the ship might have sailed on that. Sorry. Because the
Sorry, I brought it
Chase,
up.
the Chase Bank, the Chase Bank, last meeting we talked about, they already widened the road there, so we got the new driving, new
Yeah.
turning lane. So the new sidewalk for the Chase Bank is already in.
Right, but aren't you gonna have new lights in that general area?
We're not putting in new lights, they timed them all.
Not street
Street
lights.
Oh.
The decorative light posts. Is
I
that
don't know
part
if,
of the block?
I think that's part of the block that's on the road, on Heights Road, not on the Roten Avenue.
Oh, so model block is not on Norotan Avenue?
I don't, not to my recollection at all.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
The only thing is there's a gazebo that's supposed to be
Yeah.
next to Chase. That's gonna have some decorations in there. That's what they're building actually today and yesterday.
We should talk about that because I think that, maybe the town can work with those businesses over time to extend that model block so that it's in that entire commercial area of Norotan Heights.
Okay, because I know that the Bob's Auto Body just changed hands,
Oh,
so something's gonna happen there when they come to
Tell
us. I don't know yet.
Okay.
They tore that down, right?
That's next to it. That's Prism Painting got torn down. That's part of Federal. That's going to be a gazebo. So it's, I think, stairs that go down to Walgreens and Equinox.
I bring it up because for people I know, family and friends, and I know I hear it from my wife all the time on the real estate side, it's an aha moment for people when they come into town. It really is, whether it's Christmas and you drive through and see the lights and the wreaths, or now
Yeah.
with the flags, and I think it's been done so well that it should continue to be done as much as possible, because it is just an aha moment.
Yeah,
for the
it's
town.
not really expensive either.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
not a heavy lift.
Yeah,
And they
that's
like
good.
it. Thank you. I will put that in the memory bank. What else? Relative to downtown, and I just mentioned ARB, saw the new Gulf gas station that's got redone. ARB also saw the old Brooks Brothers building in town, changed.
the old.
It's been well, they closed during COVID.
That-
It's not that old.
I just feel like the
Um,
building's not that old.
That building changed hands. The building changed hands, and now they are going to redesign the interior of it to have a new front door and new facade along the post road, and stairs going up to the second floor, so you can break the first floor and second floor. The building was designed as a single-tenant, 3-story building, which is 2 stories above ground, 1 story below ground. So that's going to have a new facade, which is kind of exciting. What else do I have? We touched on it a little bit, I think a little bit ago, some of the bills that passed in, I would say, the Senate and the House up in Hartford. It passed maybe last week. It's called House Bill 6107. That is all the proposed zoning changes statewide. The bill was for lack of a better word, as it was first drafted a year ago, was watered down to a new version. It still did pass in the House and in the Senate. To my knowledge, it's on the governor's desk for signature. I personally have not read the entire bill. I've read pieces of it and parts of it. We are right now planning to have a special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission next Tuesday, a week from, or 5 days from today. And we invited Representative Terry Wood to come to that meeting and Representative Matt Blumenthal to come to that meeting for us to explain what is in the ins and outs of that bill. It's I don't know how many pages it is, but just for public knowledge, and it is public knowledge, Terry Wood, our representative in town, voted against the bill, and Matt Blumenthal, one of our other representatives, voted for the bill. It did pass. It has not been signed to my last knowledge. Bob Duff and Patricia Billy Miller, or others, 2 senators, will also be invited to the meeting. But if 2 of those 4 people can attend, we will have the meeting. If it does not happen, if they can't attend, we're going to cancel the meeting. Everyone on the RTM, PZ&H committee, I think, is also coming to that meeting. And where the RTM comes in, with regards to the bill, there's 2 opt-out provisions. One is an opt-out provision for parking, where the state mandated parking for multifamily housing projects. And the other opt-out provision in the bill is for accessory dwelling units. The state's mandating accessory dwelling units in every single district across the entire town in all municipalities across the state. In our town, we have advocated for local control. So it's going to be my recommendation that we're going to opt out of those provisions so we can keep local control, and we're going to do our own. We've been very successful for doing our own controls relative to items like that, and I'm going to get into it in a second because other towns look at us for that. And if the opt-out that I'm suggesting is successful on the Planning and Zoning Commission, it has to go to the RTM, and the RTM has to approve it if we approve it, or they can deny it. And I don't know what happens if they deny it. I guess it dies.
State will prevail.
Yeah, the state will prevail. So you'd have whatever the state wants in 6107. You talk about calendars. I gotta believe it's not gonna happen until October, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I believe that's the effective date.
Yeah, so I don't think we'd be in front of the RTM until, October or something like that. It's definitely after the summer.
Do you have to opt out before it goes into effect?
I think the effective date, I saw 2 different effective dates. One effective date on some of them was January 1st, 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I also heard an effective date of October 1st, 2021. So I don't really know how it goes. And it still has yet to be signed by the governor, to my last knowledge. I mean, he could sign it today. And there was some other, I'm not really into how the state government works, but I guess if he doesn't sign it, it goes into law anyway. Is that what your understanding is? We don't really know.
I don't know.
Okay, that's fine. So that's why we're trying to have this special meeting
Yeah.
with Matt and Terry and Bob, and for them to explain to us.
Mhm.
I mean, we've got a bunch of people reading these things, and they voted for it or voted on it, and they should know.
They should
better
know
than
some
we
of
do.
it.
Right. So that's where that kind of stands. What else is fun?
Can I ask a wonky question about that?
Sure you can.
And
Oh, what
maybe
question?
not to be answered today, but if it could be answered when you meet with Terry and Matt.
Mhm.
Just because the bill allows accessory dwelling units in all zones,
Mhm.
is it also not true that they still have to conform to setback and height restrictions and other things?
Yes.
So by virtue of that, are there certain zones in Darien where they would not work?
Yes.
So could you be prepared, could staff be prepared to talk about the actual impacts versus the theoretical impacts, right? Because I worry about accessory dwelling units in a 1/5 acre zone,
Correct.
right? And then the ancillary effect of on-street parking that might occur. So I just want to make sure that we present to the public where in fact, in Darien, accessory dwelling units will be allowed to be built if the state rules prevail.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
no problem. And I think we're on the same page as that. The state rules that there's no special permit requirement for accessory dwelling units. In our town right now, most stuff like that is all special permit. So you look at traffic and safety and health and whatnot. And it's an as of right. The only thing the state will matters is really building code. Like you can convert your garage into an apartment, but if your windows are not fireproof windows, you cannot have it a dwelling unit. They're called fireman windows. They have to be so many feet off the ground, have to be so many inches high or low, and if they don't comply,
Yeah.
you can't have a dwelling unit in there. And you maybe can just change the windows. I mean, I actually had to do that in my house up in Rhode Island.
And then normal stuff like septic versus sewer, if it's septic, it has to align with what the septic tank can.
It gets very deep
Yeah.
into the weeds, and there's a lot of stuff. We have a lot of houses that are near the water.
Yeah.
So we're different than New Canaan, and we're different than the backcountry of Greenwich.
Yeah.
So with local control was one of my big things, and I don't think you can do a blanket statement across the entire state for certain items. And I hope the RTM will back me up on that.
We have to keep them well in the loop.
Yeah, that's why they're definitely, I talk to Amy Barsanti once every 2 weeks, about stuff like this, and, she knows the business too.
Yeah.
With regard to Corbin Drive project, the demo signs are now up on the 3 buildings, or 2 of the 3 buildings along Corbin Drive. Those 3 buildings are the gas station, the Dynamic Fitness Mathnasium building, and then the Tibbetts office building. Those tenants are still in place. It was already been noticed. Have not spoken to the developer in a week or 2, but I'm told its construction findings will set up. So in August, you might see demolition going on there. You might see construction in the Roden Avenue. You might see construction someplace else. So when you come back in September, it'll be smiling. What else do I have? The other item that I think is important is, I alluded to it earlier, Darien is really looked at in our zoning office, not myself, our zoning office is really looked at as one of the most progressive and leading the charge in the state. People want to follow our best practices. This week, the Greenwich Planning Zoning Chairman and Planning Zoning Commission called up Darien and said, will you come and teach us how you guys did your Affordable Housing Trust Fund? I was not available because I was at an event with Duke with my daughter. So Fred Donite, who's our esteemed associate planner, attended a Greenwich planning and zoning meeting with their Board of Finance, what they call the Board of Taxation, I think it's called the BET, and explained to them how our Affordable Housing Trust Fund works. The other person that was there was Sam Fuller, who is the chairman of the board of the trust fund, and he explained to them how good ours is and how it works. They modeled theirs, are modeling theirs partially after ours, and they're going to put it forth to their quote-unquote RTM. It just goes to show you that people are looking to us for guidance. That's why it's local control, and it wasn't. I didn't create it. I wasn't around, but whoever did it did a great job. What else do we have? The only other item that I thought was awesome was, it's a little bit of a planning zoning issue, but it's not, but the prom tent at the high school was really cool.
There's very positive feedback on that, other than the heat, but it was very positive.
I thought that might have been a zoning issue, but I looked at it and I said, nope, you're allowed to have any high school events on a high school property, and a prom falls underneath a high school
Yeah.
event.
A lot of venues were thought about. I even touched base with Jamie on a venue, and that's what they decided on, and it was a success. So.
I heard it was.
It's a beautiful property, why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
I heard it was just like Happy Days.
Yeah.
I think that's it for me. I'm
Okay.
available for any questions.
Just,
Steph.
Norotan Heights,
Yes, sir.
Palmer's. I don't see any activity. I see boarded buildings. Any indication of what's might be happening there?
There was a meeting at staff level and architect and legal levels with the developer 2 weeks ago. I think Jamie and I were also in attendance. That application, they're moving it forward. The developer's coming back with some changes to the project, and most of them center around an anchor tenant. They never had an anchor tenant for the project other than the Palmer store, and they need to redesign a couple things for an anchor tenant that they're trying to secure. If you do not have an anchor tenant and you're building a commercial project, it is nearly impossible to get construction financing. They found that out the hard way.
It's easy to understand.
They never asked me, but I could have told them that. Now they might have an anchor tenant, so they get to come back. If you know, Walgreens was always staying at Federal. That's the first thing that was built.
Yeah.
Equinox was already there. The Citibank building was already there. David Genovese has got anchor tenants, and he's got a lot of tenants. So you will see some action there. They do have to come in front of the committee again. We are rooting for them, that they get their anchor tenancy signed up.
So are we.
And we're rooting for them to get some kind of construction financing going. It has to be in all compliance with everything we asked for them. The only thing that we're going to do, and this was actually a suggestion once again from Jamie about 2 years ago, if you ever go to Manhattan and it says like in front of the building it's called airbrushing, I think is what they on the silk screens they put an airbrush and it says like the gap coming soon.
Right.
And they wrap it in that.
Yeah.
David Genevieve's going to sign up at Corbin Drive. It has that. They did it at some of the other projects in town. John Vicaro's got it now. We're going to ask them to wrap the building in green screening. I don't know if they're going to put on something on there. It's a little bit more expensive. But we'd like to see it wrapped, and you put that green, it's called screening. You see on tennis courts around the fencing.
I think Federal's
Right.
doing it too, because
Yeah.
they contacted us to connect with the schools to maybe get some student artwork on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
which
And
is
If
again-
you
really
saw
cool.
the aquarium did it, and the aquarium did these beautiful designs on all the screening, so you pulled up and you were like,
Yeah.
kind of like, is that a building or a fence? It can be done pretty neat. yeah.
Jamie asked that during the application process, and we put it in Federal's, but Federal's
Yeah.
not started on Roten Avenue yet,
It's a great idea.
or Heights Road yet, so.
Well, it builds excitement.
It does.
It's kind of free advertising, and as you get tenants signed up, you can add them to the screen.
Yeah.
So, could I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
I was walking the other day. I think it's not 5 Mile, but is it as you're going into Tokenique, that old farmhouse and red barn? Did I see demolition signs there?
5 Mile.
Yes, you know what it is. It's,
Up from the gas
next to
station.
the Vibe, at the intersection of Tokenique Road
And 5 Mile,
and
right?
5 Mile River Road. It's associated with the Pheasant Run.
Oh, that's
really?
that's what I was wondering, if they're trying to connect all that, yeah.
Yeah, there was a transaction there, we've not seen anything.
But I believe the demolition is for the reconstruction of a new home. Don't quote me on that, you might want to.
I just wasn't sure. I saw a demo sign up near the barn, and I was like, how is that? But,
I think it's to build a new home,
okay,
I
good.
believe. It's been
Yeah.
here in Town Hall for a little while. There was some objections to the demolition
Okay,
by some people, but it's now been formally approved for demolition, and the permits have been issued.
thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Steve? Thanks, I always love your reports.
The only other thing I do want to add is just the electronics meeting thing. We're
Yeah.
on top of that. We really want to have a hybrid mode and get us into the 22nd century where applicants can put stuff on flat screens. So I envision flat screens, and here's some data that Kate's going to pick out.
I know Jim Cameron,
Yeah.
and we received a grant from TV 79. It'll be 2 flat screens, one behind and one about, like, over Jamie's head, so that they can be moved so that people in the audience can see, and board members will be able to see. We're waiting just on quotes for wiring right now.
Yeah, it's because, I mean, if you've ever been to an old P&Z meeting, the applicants usually put, a thing on a
Boards.
on an easel, and they look at it with a
Yeah.
pointer. and-
Yeah, when they designed it, the thought was not making it so that the audience would be able to see and the board would be able to see without having to get up and move.
So I appreciate your guidance with all that and helping out.
Well, I kudos to Jim for seeking out funding from the from the cable, Area 9 Cable Council to get the hardware, and we're just waiting on the prices for the pulling of the wires.
Yeah, so that, the F&B, it's gonna be free. Don't worry about it.
But it will set a technology precedent for in town. So 206 will be well equipped, but we
Yes.
do meet in other rooms.
Mhm.
So we should anticipate, if we're gonna continue, for example, to use 119 as a meeting room, we may have to look at some technology upgrades there as well. Okay, I have a list of stuff, so I'm gonna go fast, but stop me with anything. I'm sorry Terry couldn't be here today. I think she, as I said, she's in recovery mode. She's gonna have a lot to share with us. We're also going to be having legislative updates in the coming 2 weeks from COST and CCM. So I'll have more to report to you on the stuff that moved forward, the stuff that didn't move forward. As you know, nothing ever dies in Hartford. So just because it didn't move forward this year doesn't mean it won't come back in special session or next year. I think there will be a special session, from what I understand, to determine if the state is going to legalize recreational cannabis. I don't like to call it recreational anything because I don't believe the use of substances should be recreational myself, so I'll call it non-medical cannabis. I think there's wide support for that in the state of Connecticut. I think the bill has a lot of things in it associated with equity and underserved communities, which is a really important discussion as we roll out any legalization of cannabis. I want to welcome our newest Board of Selectmen member, Monica McNally, who's here today, taking the place of Kristen McNamara as our new town clerk. So some great changes happening here in Town Hall. Just on COVID, we have had one COVID case reported in the last 8 days for the town of Darien, which is fantastic. I will say that people aren't getting tested anymore. You know, we've had a large number of people who've been vaccinated, but people aren't getting tested anymore. So my word to folks who are watching is, if you're not feeling well, please get tested. It's really important to know if you may be positive with COVID so that you can protect yourself and the others that you're around. We had a great, awesome Memorial Day parade. Thousands of super happy people lining the streets. My hat is off to the Monuments and Ceremonies Commission, Terry Gaffney, who prepared, not knowing whether we could go ahead, and then when we, literally 3 weeks before the parade said yes, he pulled it all together with a lot of volunteers. It was terrific. The ceremony in Spring Grove Cemetery afterward was terrific, probably the most well-attended that I've seen in my tenure here. Related to the American Rescue Plan funding for the town side, school money goes directly to the schools. So the $1,025,000. I don't know if you guys have received your funding yet, Duke. Do you know?
We have not.
Okay, so the town of Darien is receiving $6.3 million. We were going to be receiving $2.2 million until our federal delegation, and again, kudos to them, got Connecticut monies that were otherwise attributed to county governments in other states. We don't have counties, we have COGS. For this purpose, they're treating the COGS like county government. So, but the money's not going to the COGS, it's been divided out population-based to the municipalities. So we went from getting 2.2 million to 6.3 million on the municipal side. We had until this past Wednesday to make our first tranche initial claim. And we submitted a claim for $3.2 million. And it was just simply that. It was making a claim for our funding. We didn't have to submit a spending plan the way the schools do. But that work needs to begin now. So in working with Kate and Jen and talking about process, we're going to recommend to the Board of Finance and the town that we convene an advisory committee to help us determine what were the largest impacts to the town of Darien from COVID, and how can we use our money best to leverage recovery, renewal, and remedies for any of those impacts. CCM put together an advisory committee with a very broad spectrum of state constituencies. I'd like to do the same thing, and we'll be rolling out that plan first to the Board of Selectmen and to the Board of Finance, and see if you all agree. It will include members from town government, including the RTM and committees within the RTM. It will include the nonprofit sector, emergency services, the business community, and I will be looking for input on who we might have missed on our list of potential attendees. And from that, I'd like to propose that we have a facilitated discussion about how best we want to direct our funding. We have to make sure that it's tied to COVID and that the money will actually address those COVID impacts. And the reporting is going to be really important. WestCog is likely to hire a consultant to specifically work with our 18 towns to make sure that we get it all right, that our project proposals will be approved by the Treasury Department. The last thing you want is to do something and have the Treasury want to claw back your money. There's no time pressure for us on this. We just had to make our claim, but we have time to make sure that we craft a really thoughtful spending plan. We approved, by virtue of the process that everybody was engaged in, outdoor dining for the Goose, like last summer. That's awesome. We already talked about one of the bills, 6443 and 6107. Also in 6443 is now a new, as of right, ability for food establishments to have outdoor dining. That's not tied to the governor's executive orders, so that will live on in perpetuity. I think that's fantastic. Now when you drive downtown Darien and you see people dining street side, it really adds this incredible vibrancy to the community, which I'm super pleased it's going to live on, and I hope planning and zoning is cool with it. We finally received this week our contract for the STEEP grant for the $92,000 to do the landscaping at Highland Farms. We will be focusing on the elements that were in our special permit requirement up there, doing the screening plantings around the parking lots and the pollinator pathway, since they were both called out in the STEEP grant application. Hopefully we will have enough funding to do all of those well. Our consultant is now working with the abutting neighbors in the development of the screening plan. So we're really hoping that we can have that all wrapped up through the appropriate planning season in the coming months. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that, Kate?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. We're working on a couple of interesting things. I'm sure you've heard about trees. We love trees. We love trees planted in the right place, and the right kind of trees in the right place. So we have two things going on. As part of our annual sidewalk maintenance program, there are trees that had to be removed, will have to be removed, so that we can make our sidewalks safe. The second largest liability claim for our insurance company, Kerma, is from uneven sidewalk claims. And we've had several in the town of Darien of people that have fallen on uneven sidewalks. So it is our goal to remedy that. We know that pedestrian infrastructure and safety and a walkable town is of critical value to our residents. So that's going to mean that in some places, trees will have to be removed. They will be replaced in another more appropriate location. There's also an effort on the part of Eversource, as part of their the scrutiny that they've come under from the state of Connecticut, to be more responsive and more well prepared for storm events, to clear around their distribution lines and transmission lines. Little Brook Road in Darien has a number of trees, 50 or more trees that have been tagged for removal that are underneath a high voltage transmission line. That is a startling change for the people that live along Little Brook Road. So I've been facilitating work between Eversource and the neighbors to come to a mutually agreed upon outcome there. Some trees are gonna have to be removed. We're hoping to save some trees, but we're also asking Eversource to come forward with an appropriate replanting plan. So lots of tree stuff going on. We're also working with several residents on Holmes Avenue on some pedestrian safety improvements. We have to study a few things, both from a public works department perspective and from a local traffic authority perspective, and then come up with some recommended changes along Holmes Avenue. One of the issues, Duke, is what the neighbors have indicated to us is that there's a lot of walking students to Holmes School. And at the intersection of Intervale and Holmes, I think it's worth a review to see if they need a crossing guard.
Well, I've been after that for years.
That's one of 9 things on the list that we're going to be looking at for Holmes Avenue.
Holmes is a major connector between 106 and West Avenue.
Yes.
And so you
I
get
think
traffic
I think
there,
we-
it's just a little local street, but it,
No.
Holmes is a block from me, right?
Holmes Ave goes from Middlesex.
goes from,
To
well,
west.
okay, yeah.
Holmes Ave has 2 pieces to it. So if you go drive it, apparently there's a lot of kids that walk Holmes Ave,
Yeah,
walk to Middlesex
yeah.
and to Holmes School.
Because it's exciting kids.
Yep.
I came up there this morning and I was like, holy cow, the amount of kids walking
Yeah.
from way up towards Middlesex down to Holmes. And
Yes.
I was in that
Yeah.
Devon neighborhood
Yeah.
for years, but
Yeah. Most schools have, I don't mean to interrupt, but most schools have a crossing guard on either side of the school. Home school only has one on one side,
yep.
and half the population comes from the other side, so.
Plus you have, 4 roads
Yeah.
coming together?
Well, I'd like to ask for, the partnership with the administration to take a look at, those walking students, and
Sure.
if there are areas of pedestrian concern, if there's a viable
Yeah.
idea of another crossing guard. Bicentennial celebrations have restarted, albeit a year late. Great bicentennial birthday bash at the beach the other night. And then we have our anniversary day this Saturday. Again, although it's a year late, June 12th is the actual anniversary of our incorporation, 1820. So there'll be a very thoughtful ceremony at Slauson Cemetery at the grave site of Thaddeus Bell. And then I'm really, really excited about the fall event, October 23rd, Heritage Day, combination event of the Museum of Darien, First Congregational Church, and the Mather Homestead. And there's going to be an actual reenactment by the 5th Connecticut Regiment that day. So only comes around once every 100 years. So.
What's
Really
the date of
enjoy
that?
So we should make this.
Town Technology Committee, we're still looking for some volunteers to be interviewed to join as at-large community members for the town's technology committee. TV 79 is going to create some programming so that we can do some PR around open volunteer positions. So Jim Cameron for working with us on that. And we're working with a company called Boxcar. You might remember them. They were working on an app to help find different places for commuters to park. Well, that world blew up.
Yeah.
It's coming back though. I've really noticed a change in our commuter parking lots. But they're exploring the idea of coach bus service from Darien to Manhattan. They've done it already in a couple of places, and so they're doing some legwork, some survey work. But we anticipate that there will be a coach bus that you can reserve a seat on going from the Darien train station into Manhattan every day, if you find that a more comfortable way to commute to your job. Sounds pretty good to me. Comfortable seats, power and internet at every seat in the
Yeah.
coach bus.
It's kind of like a
And you
Hampton
can
jitney.
reserve it by app, which is
Yeah.
fantastic.
I had the opportunity to do that for 3 months in 1983 during the transit strike. The only thing is, we were driving in our car, 4 of us, every day from the Roden Heights train station, commuting into New York. It was, this would be much, much cushier.
Well, I understand the commute into New York, and I don't know if any of you here have done it, is the time has been greatly exacerbated because everybody's back in their car. So we're hoping to get back in the trains at some point. And last but not least, Darien sidewalk sales will be happening. Traditional sidewalk sales this year from July 28th to July 31st. Need a sign off yet from the Darien Police Department, being mindful that we will have construction work happening in our downtown. I want to be particularly sensitive to making sure as people circulate in that area, they're kept safe.
This back of the theater should be done by them.
It was more the,
Yeah,
It's the
Corbin.
Corbin.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's gonna be kind of isolated.
Yeah, and I've talked to David and
Yeah.
hopefully so.
Yeah, but the back of
Yeah.
the other side's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Our second Main Street,
Yeah, and I'd like to talk with you further offline about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
that'd be great.
Okay.
Anytime.
That's it for me, unless you have any questions. Great. Okay, then with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Steve moves, Drew
Seconds.
seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thanks, everybody, great meeting.
Thank you.
Good day. Have a good weekend.